Both XRP and Ripple have been in the news a lot since the start of this year. As a result, many people are already predicting prices in a crazy way. And I do believe I need to discuss it because, first of all, I don't want many of you to become overly optimistic. Second, I don't want many of you to genuinely not profit from this cycle and compensate yourself for participating in the entire process, as well as for being incredibly patient. Having stated that, welcome to Peepo Coin channel, everybody. By the end of this video, anybody who hasn't subscribed to the channel has done so. This cycle, I will be discussing an insane price prediction for XRP. Additionally, I would like to share my thoughts on what I'm doing with XRP with you all. However, I do want to address what has been going on first, don't I? As there have been numerous upgrades since the start of this year. The first is that ROUSD did launch. This was a big deal, as we all know. It is still very important. It receives a lot of attention. Furthermore, we are aware that Ripple collaborated with Ondo as well. Additionally, OUSG, one of their tokenized U.S. Treasury instruments, was plugged into the XRP ledger in order to further the Wall Street 2 movement. In fact, this has a connection to BlackRock. Thus, this was undoubtedly a big thing, and one of the more significant announcements that occurred in January. Furthermore, additional banks were using Ripple custody. This was significant because, as we all know, custody is the first step in the process of everything else. A bank must have custody in place before it can participate in stablecoin, tokenization, or even DeFi efforts. Therefore, the fact that banks are already using Ripple custody gives us a clue that these institutions are preparing to deliver more services. Additionally, we already know that banks are beginning to express their desire to use cryptocurrency for payments in 2025. Additionally, the FDIC, OCC, and even the Fed have recently given banks permission to heavily invest in cryptocurrency. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that these large institutions are now discussing their actions in an open manner. Furthermore, we are aware that Ripple and BDAX collaborated in February to increase institutional crypto custody in South Korea. In order to facilitate institutional adoption, BDAX Korea will leverage Ripple custody to offer safe infrastructure for XRP, ROUSD, and other cryptocurrency assets. Growth of XRP ledger developers in Korea's changing regulatory environment. This was undoubtedly significant since, once more, it heavily incorporated XRP and the XRPO in relation to institutional acceptance, developer expansion, and just supporting additional use cases. Apart from that, however, we also witnessed Ripple accelerate the popularity of cryptocurrency in Europe back in March, and Portugal's recent introduction of Ripple payments made this possible. This also applies to Unicamio. It offers safe, transparent, and instantaneous transactions, modernizing cross-border payments. Given how open the EU market is today to using digital assets and technology in this area, this was a significant event. It goes without saying that many individuals believe that Ripple payments have no bearing on XRP. We know that when years ROUSD or even Ripple payments, many employees have said that they love to push volume through the XRP ledger and XRP because of the efficiency tied to it. This makes it extremely bullish for XRP and the XRPL, even if they are using a stablecoin or pushing volume through the payments side. Although there are undoubtedly some regulatory barriers, the market is nevertheless highly optimistic. In addition, we know that Ripple became the first blockchain payments provider licensed in the DIFF in March after receiving regulatory permission from the Dubai Financial Services Authority. The cross-border payment sector, which is still quite optimistic for XRP, the XRP out, and of course Ripple, were all affected by this. Then of course we received the big news. The SEC case is essentially over. The SEC consented to unconditionally withdraw its appeal. Now, Ripple has consented to pay the $50 million 0 cents punishment and withdraw its cross-appeal. We still have a little while to wait for this to happen, however. The case is essentially over. For XRP, the XRP community, and even Ripple itself, this is extremely positive. As you can see by the engagement and the quantity of views, this was undoubtedly a big one and everyone was quite optimistic about it. Next up, we learned in early April that Ripple was purchasing $1 billion Hidden Road for $1,250,000,000 0 cents, which is extremely positive for XRP because the litigation had been abandoned and concluded. According to the breakdown, Hidden Road has been able to clear $3 trillion 0 cents annually for more than 300 of the world's leading financial institutions. This funding will be used to access XRP and the value movement of the XRP ledger. And Brett Garlinghouse himself is the source of this. In light of this, we can observe that XRP is experiencing some of the greatest exposure and that Ripple is growing quickly as a result of their numerous initiatives and the opening of the market. In addition, we recently witnessed our RWA value appear on the XRP ledger via ARKX, OpenEden, and even RLUSD. RWAs alone are responsible for more than $114 million. The market value of stablecoins alone exceeds $144 million. And it's just really encouraging to see this because it shows us not just how large the XRP market is, but also how quickly it's becoming into a major tokenization issue. However, it also gives us insight into its continuous growth. I have emphasized this point ever since the beginning of XRP in 2020, despite the fact that we have faced some of the most difficult challenges, including the SEC case and the delistings. Nothing has stopped us, have we? In the same way that we are still growing, expanding, and becoming a stronger asset in this field, Ripple is also becoming a lot bigger business. Therefore, there was nothing that prevented us from becoming into what we are now. Well, what are we today, you might ask? You know, we're a $2.00 cryptocurrency, as if not much is going on here. Yes, you might say that. However, you should be aware of the amazing things that XRP has achieved thus far this cycle. It most certainly is. As I mentioned earlier, this has caused a lot of people to discuss XRP's wild price forecasts, and this prestigious scientific announcement on the 22nd was essentially the beginning of everything. They doubled down and posted this video after I had already made one on this, notably the $37 to $50 XRP price projection, therefore $33 to $50 is the aim for XRP, somewhat conservative. Given that that's humorous then, it seems somewhat conservative. I'm not sure what influences my price prediction for XRP, which is between $7.00 and $10.00 this cycle. That makes it small, I suppose. Not worth it? We're following a pretty similar trend to 2017, but considerably larger, so it feels a little conservative. As much as $77.00 to $100.00 could be yours if you're ready to measure as a cup and handle. Whoa, take a look at that stunning TA they have on display. The thesis is strongly supported by a simple arrow that points from 33 to 50 bucks, correct? You see, this is the issue I have with many price forecasts. Of course, pricing forecasts are subject to change. As an illustration, another cryptocurrency analyst here claims that the price of XRP is resembling the 2017 cycle of $27.00 and $120.00.